This is CBC Here and Now.
We've got the lowest tuition of any university across the country, and we've got the highest operating grant per student.
Time to thaw the tuition freeze.
A new report recommends sweeping changes for MUN and the College of the North Atlantic.
Well, we're getting into the weekend, but before we get there, we've got some rain and wind on the way.
We would just take some time to pause right now and reflect.
Renaming on hold. The government backs away from changing Red Indian Lake until more people can weigh in. Good evening and welcome to Here and Now. I'm Anthony Germain.
And I'm Carolyn Stokes. Well, could a tuition freeze at Memorial University be lifted? That's one of several recommendations in an independent report on post-secondary education. The report was commissioned a few years ago, and it recommends sweeping changes at this province's university and colleges. Here and Now's Mark Quinn joins us live. So Mark, people are still trying to absorb what's in the report. What can you tell us about it?
Well, that's absolutely right. The 350-page report is dated April 5th, and Tom Osborne says stakeholders are still trying to digest it. He said he can't say yet if the recommendations will be adopted, but he did strongly suggest the government agrees that the tuition freeze must go.
Since 2005, we have put almost $600 million of taxpayers' money into freezing tuitions. If we continue with the tuition freeze into next year, it's over $70 million to freeze the tuitions next year. $70 million in 1 year alone. The amount to freeze tuitions keeps growing. So does it need to be looked at? I think it absolutely does.
The report also recommends that operating grants to MUN and the College of the North Atlantic are maintained, not cut. Osborne questions if that is sustainable.
Got the highest operating grant per student across the country. We fund per student, per full-time equivalent, the taxpayers of this province are funding an average of $22,000 per student. The Canadian average is just over $11,000 per student. So we hear from taxpayers that they want to see a change. We need to find a sustainable way. And the report, I think, fell short on sustainability.
Now, Osborne says it's too late for these recommendations to actually influence the budget, that next provincial budget that's expected in early June. He says it'll probably be several months of consultations before these recommendations are either adopted or rejected. Live at Memorial University in St. John's, I'm Mark Quinn for Here and Now.
Thanks, Mark. Beautiful out there at MUN live right now. So just how much does it cost for students to attend Memorial University? Well, because of that tuition freeze, MUN is the least expensive of all the Canadian provinces. So let's compare. According to Statistics Canada, undergraduate students in this province pay just over $3,000 in tuition fees. Quebec is a close second. However, fees here are a far cry from our maritime neighbours. Nova Scotia has the most expensive tuition fees of all the provinces at almost $9,000.
And what about the students? How are they reacting to today's report? Let's bring in reporter Terry Roberts. So Terry, what are you hearing from people on campus today?
Yeah, well, just like all of us, students were also scrambling. They were caught off guard really by this report, and many were scrambling this afternoon to digest its contents. And from what I can gather, the early reviews are not good. In fact, the Students' Union here at MUN and the Newfoundland and Labrador chapter of the Canadian Federation of Students, well, they're giving this report a failing grade. Firstly, they're concerned about this proposal to raise more money through corporate donations. They believe this could lead to the privatization of post-secondary education in this province. And secondly, this long-standing tuition freeze, they say lifting that right now would be disastrous for the university and for the province in general.
I really do think that the tuition freeze and the affordable tuition is one of the main factors that draws students to MUN across the province, across the world. And it is one of the main reasons that students from Newfoundland and Labrador stay in Newfoundland and Labrador. So I think that one of the largest issues that's going to come out of this is students are not going to be considering Memorial as much of a viable option. And I think that it's going to really increase the outmigration of young people in this province.
Now, these low tuition rates here at MUN is really putting this university on the world map, and it's attracting thousands of students from all over the world. Actually, there's more international students here now at MUN than you could find a population of some medium-sized towns in Newfoundland and Labrador, places like Bishops Falls or Harbour Grace. But MUN has been signaling for quite some time, you know, that that freeze is no longer sustainable. As for the university president, Vianne Timmins was not available for an interview today. Again, she also received this report today, but she released this statement saying that this report covers a wide range of areas and we will take the time necessary to study it. She says, I look forward to working with the Memorial community, the provincial government, and other key stakeholders to continue to advance Newfoundland and Labrador's university. Now, of course, the College of the North Atlantic is also featured heavily in this report, but like MUN, none of their top officials were available for a comment today, but I did receive a statement from College of the North Atlantic saying that they believe this effort will result in a stronger post-secondary experience for all students. Reporting live from the St. John's campus of Memorial University, I'm Terry Roberts for Here and Now.
Well, another recommendation from the report is to give MUN's Board of Regents more autonomy and the power to appoint its own president without government influence. Minister Osborne says that's the norm in most other places, and he thinks it's a fair option.
Most other jurisdictions have, you know, the president of the institution is chosen by the institution. So I don't have an issue with that at first blush.
A St. John's man recently got the green light to reboot a very popular series from the late 90s, early 2000s.
Anyone who knows me has known how passionate I've been about this project.
I'm Jeremy Eaton, and I'll tell you what Stephen Dunn is up to coming up on Here and Now.
As you can see from everybody, it is gorgeous outside here in the east. We reached a high near 11 degrees earlier today in St. John's, and temperatures across the board really through central into the double digits, Twillingate as well, and then up across Labrador still sitting in those single digits, about 4 degrees in Happy Valley, Goose Bay today. Taking a look at the setup, we do have an area of low pressure that has been spinning over the province over the last couple of days. It's moving slowly, but we are seeing some clearing skies to the south, as you can see. Here with the satellite and radar. Some showers still creeping up along the west coast and then through central. That will generally be the story as we head through the overnight tonight, but a next area of low pressure is going to move in, and this one is already prompting some wind warnings from Hawke's Bay through to Port aux Basques, as well as the Wreck House area, where we could see gusts in excess of 130 to 140 kilometers per hour, and areas prone to those easterly winds will see gusts upwards of 110, but I'll get into those details and have the rainfall forecast coming up.
Thanks, Ashley. Well, the province is backing off its plan to rename Red Indian Lake, at least for now. The government was moving to change the name to a Mi'kmaq word that means peaceful lake, but that led to an outcry from people who were upset with the lack of public consultations, as well as from those who wanted a Beothuk word as the new name for the lake. Well, today, in a joint statement with Indigenous leaders, the province says the name change is on hold until there are more consultations.
I believe our heart was in the right place. We have, as most folks would know, we have the remains down at the rooms of the last two known Beothuks, Demasduit and Nunusabut. When we look at what is now known as Red Indian Lake is seriously being considered as the final resting place, but there was consensus among the Indigenous leaders that the name was not appropriate, it's derogatory, it's colonialism, and that name would have to change. So, you know, this was the name that came forth, that was agreed upon by the Indigenous leaders. We were going forth with that, and since that time we have heard, you know, there's been a high volume of feedback.
And now that the government has hit the pause button, residents of the Red Indian Lake area are trying to figure out how to move forward and turn this experience into a positive one. Here now is Garrett Barry with that story.
No matter how stressful it's been, we've got the province talking now about history.
Chief Mizel Joe says there's been some hurt this week, but also a lot of good. The proposed renaming of this lake has led to growing calls for a deeper discussion. Take the 1,300 people asking for a formal consultation and a discussion of the Beothuk history of this place.
In my view, it has not been a negative. You know, we've been upset, but it quickly turns to let's stand together, and we've seen that. Everyone is standing together, I think, in this area for sure.
Not everyone is on board with ditching the name.
I'm issued a status card from the federal government of Canada. States on the back, you are an Indian under the Indian Act of Canada. I'm personally, I can't speak for others, I'm personally not offended at all by the name Indian. I mean, you're an Indian. The Beothuks were Red Indians.
But there's a growing consensus to talk more.
That's me personally. However, if there's people that are offended by the name Indian, that's why these consultations would be so important, that we can hear their side.
Beothuk people would spend their winters here. After summer was over, they'd follow the caribou inland, drive them towards the water, and hunt them on the shores of this lake. This place, called Indian Point, is one of the best documented Beothuk sites in Newfoundland and Labrador. There's evidence of well-built houses here. This site would also become a place of violent conflict between the Beothuk and European settlers. Shauna did it through the kidnapping of Demazduit on the north side of this lake and the killing of her husband while trying to save her. That couple was later buried here, but years later, a European explorer stole them from their burial place. Those are the remains that have been repatriated, and there's a growing consensus that they should be returned here.
So from that, it came to maybe we can change the lake to a Mi'kmaq name, Hantagodi, a peaceful place.
But Joe says he's open-minded and wants everyone included in this process.
And I've said this from day one, going back to when we decided to go after the remains. It's not an Aboriginal issue. It's an issue that belongs to all of Newfoundland. The history, good, bad, or ugly, it's the history that this Newfoundland people have to live with.
And this week, he's seen some landmark progress.
And for the first time in our history, for me, I've seen a premier speaking our language, even though it's but 2 words, but nevertheless it's our language. And to me, that's an incredible achievement.
Garrett Barry, CBC News on Red Indian Lake.
Well, a man well known in Happy Valley Goose Bay has been sentenced to 15 months in jail. Valence Oliver was handed the jail term yesterday. He previously pleaded guilty to possessing child pornography. Oliver once worked in MP Yvonne Jones' office and through his media company often filmed children's dance recitals and school concerts.
There are 2 new cases of COVID-19 in the province today to tell you about. Both are in the Eastern Health Region and both involve travel. There are also 2 new recoveries today, so there are still 27 overall active cases. So that hasn't changed, but there are now 2 people hospitalized with the virus.
Well, the province is extending its deadline for the residential rebate program. While the deadline for applications has closed, homeowners now have until the end of September to complete construction, and they have until the end of November to submit their payment forms. Government says it's received about 12,000 applications for its residential rebate program. Close to 4,000 applications have still yet to be approved. It totals upwards of $15 million worth of work. The program gives homeowners a payout on construction and renovation projects. The deadline for homeowners to have work completed has been extended multiple times.
Well, St. John's writer and director has inked a big-time deal with an American streaming service. Stephen Dunn is reviving an internationally renowned show that hasn't been on the air in more than 15 years. Very famous show, Queer as Folk.
Yeah, you might remember Dunn from his debut award-winning film Closet Monster. As Here Now's Jeremy Eaton explains, Dunn is eager to be part of the show he once watched in secret, and there are still plenty of stories left to tell.
For Stephen Dunn, the show Queer as Folk changed his life. Only problem, when it was on TV, he couldn't actually tell anyone he watched it.
I watched it in secret. I couldn't let anyone know that I was watching, because if you were to be seen watching that show, it would have revealed something about you that you weren't comfortable letting the world know.
And Stuart? Stuart loves himself.
Queer as Folk debuted in the UK in 1999. The original show ran for only 10 episodes, but before it ended, a North American version was already on the air. It garnered a lot of attention, and it helped shape Dunn's life.
For me personally, it kind of revolutionized the way I saw myself. Like, I had never seen, as a queer kid growing up in St. John's, I didn't actually know anyone who was also queer. And when I saw this show, I finally saw like my community reflected in a way that empowered me to be able to be comfortable exploring my sexuality, finding myself, and ultimately was one of the things that led me to become a filmmaker.
About 5 years ago, Dunn started trying to get the rights to the show, even making an in-person pitch to creator Russell T. Davies in England.
It was just a really good meeting, and we really connected over how we were seeing queer representation, what we weren't seeing still, even 20 years after the original aired. And he gave me the show, and yeah, it took about a year to like sort out the rights to it, and then another year to sell. We brought it to every major network in Hollywood and had multiple offers. It was pretty competitive.
But the pandemic delayed production and the agreement for the rights expired. Then earlier this month, it got the green light. Dunn's version will feature an all-new cast. He says it's a reimagining, more reflective of the modern time.
It's set in New Orleans, in the South. It's set in a community that has a lot of intersection of queerness, race, gender identity, able-bodied, disabled-bodied. It's a show that is a reflection of the community that I was raised by.
Dunn doesn't have to look far for inspiration. In 2017, at the age of 60, Dunn's own uncle, Pat Healy, came out. Healy, who has cerebral palsy, has grown a lot closer with his nephew in the years since, confessing that he too used to watch Queer as Folk in secret.
It really had a huge impact on me and also my vision for the series, because now I know that Patty has never seen himself reflected on television or in movies before, ever. And so one of the inspirations behind my reimagining for the show is to I'm partially making it a little bit for him too.
Dunn knows that programs like this have the power to change lives.
And my hope is that queer people can now watch Queer as Folk surrounded by their friends and family with the volume all the way to the max, instead of having to feel like this is something that no one else can know about them.
Dunn can't really say much about the series, can't talk about when they're going to start shooting or when the show will be released, just that they will be making 8 episodes. So while the local lad is making a name for himself in the film industry, one that's deeply rooted in Los Angeles, he's doing it all from his mother's kitchen right here. Jeremy Eaton, CBC News, St. John's.
Well, from one perspective to the other, take a look at the beautiful evening out there right now. Things are going to stay a little bit unsettled as we head through the weekend. We do have some rain on the way. I'll get into all those details coming up.
Time for a look at the weather, and actually just before we went to commercials, that shot of St. John's Harbor, just gorgeous out there this evening. It's total barbecue weather.
It is. That's exactly what I'm doing for supper tonight.
Nice.
Yeah, barbecue evening for sure. And temperatures today were pretty nice for most of us as well. Certainly creeping up into those double digits. Let's take a look at the highs. Most of us saw double digits in the east. A little cooler for Bonavista at 8. And then 9 degrees in Corner Brook this afternoon. Temperatures right now are dropped a few degrees, 8 degrees in St. John's, same thing for Twillingate and Rec House area and Burgeo currently sitting at about 5 degrees. Now, taking a look at the satellite and radar, you can see we do have some showers on the go for the west coast, and then generally clearing skies for the Burin Peninsula as well as Bonavista, and then the Avalon as well. Just a few more chances of a few more showers, but overall that should end as we head through the evening hours. Best chance of seeing some showers over the next couple of hours will be through Central, but that should clear as well. And then across Labrador, you're looking at some showers along coastal areas, and then some flurries will be in the mix. Certainly rain, snow mix tonight for the northern portion of Labrador as that area of low pressure continues to bring that onshore flow for you. And then as far as temperatures go tonight, we should be sitting somewhere between 1 to 2 degrees across most of the island. The winds will be generally light tonight, so a nice evening to get outside for a little bit of a walk. And then we've got the flurries, like I said, for Lab City. 0 degrees will be your overnight low. Temperature sitting near or just a degree above. The winds will be the strongest in the north, but only looking at northeasterlies rather, about 20 to 40 kilometers per hour. As we head through the day tomorrow, that area of low pressure is going to continue to affect most of Labrador as well as the northern peninsula. So we're still looking at the chance of showers. Same thing through Central, but more in the way of a mix of sun and cloud. And then for most of Labrador, again, the mix of rain and snow for the north, and then otherwise showers the story across the rest of the big land. Then you're going to note that the winds are going to shift to more easterly winds, and we're going to see some more cloud cover, high cloud cover move in, and that's in advance of our next system. By the time we get into the evening hours, most of the southern portion of the island will start to see some rain, and the winds are going to ramp up as well. The periods of rain will continue into the early morning hours on Saturday, and you can see we're already starting to see that potential for some snow to be in the mix for central areas. As far as rainfall goes, or rather winds go for tomorrow, this takes us through to Friday night. That's when the winds are going to ramp up around the Rec House area. And then those areas that are prone to easterlies on the west coast will likely see gusts upwards of about 110 kilometers per hour. Winds will pick up as well along the south coast and overnight into eastern areas as well. We could see gusts near 70 to 80 kilometers per hour as we head through the day on Saturday, or at least the morning hours on Saturday, and then stay quite strong through the day on Saturday. Here's a look at the rainfall amounts. Anywhere from a good 10 to 20 millimeters is certainly possible. Some pockets of 20 to 30 along the south coast as well. This takes us through to Saturday morning. The rain will generally continue or at least taper to showers through parts of central, so we may add a few more millimeters to that, but overall that's what we're looking at. Just a few showers expected through the afternoon on Saturday in the east. As far as temperatures go for the province, or at least the island for tomorrow, another double-digit day expected, 11 degrees for St. John, same thing for Clarenville, a little cooler in the northeast coast, 8 to 9 degrees, with the winds out of the southeast 20 to 30, and again ramping up as the day goes on. As you head towards the west coast, you're looking at temperatures in the teens as well. Corner Brook at 13 degrees, same thing for Gross Morin, and then a little cooler for the northern peninsula into the single digits as your daytime highs. For Labrador, along the coast, anywhere from 1 to 5, the warmest in the southeast, Happy Valley, Goose Bay. Still looking at the potential for a few showers and flurries in the mix, and then a rain-snow mix continues for Nain and 1 degree. And Lab City, you're looking at flurries and 6 degrees. So that's a look at your forecast for tomorrow. We'll look ahead to the weekend coming up.
Well, after a particularly warm winter, Labrador is also seeing an unusually warm spring.
Yes, ice is breaking up and fracturing almost a month ahead of normal, but the effects of climate change stretch beyond the ice.
Now, we've been covering this topic in our ongoing series, Thin Ice, and in this week's segment, Meg Roberts connects climate change with its likely impacts on the summer months.
Normally, Derek Pottle, a resident in Rigolet, wouldn't put his snowmobile away for the winter until this time next month. But spring has sprung so quickly, the ice is vanishing in a year where very little formed anyways.
I drove a snowmobile back to Rigolet from Goose Bay the end of January, and you're zigzagging around holes in the sea ice, and believe me, that's not a comfortable. That's not comfortable, and that's not safe.
The effects of climate change on the North Coast have been alarming this winter, which is part of a larger trend. Experts say temperatures in the winter play an important role in what happens in the spring and summer, which means climate change drastically impacts Inuits' way of life year-round.
The whole cycle is impacted. It just like it goes from one to the other to the other to the other. There's nothing human or animal is immune from what's happening.
Pottle says berries are at risk with warmer temperatures, heavier rain, and wind, all in which are being seen more frequently. He's concerned about wildlife both on the land and in the sea. He's noticed ponds drying up in the summer, a crucial habitat for some species. And maybe one of the more annoying changes, the bugs.
You virtually can't breathe for them, and it's horrible.
Perhaps one of the top places to see evidence of climate change in the summer is in the Torngat Mountains, where shrubs now sweep across the barrens. The amount of shrub cover has about tripled in size inside the park since the late 1990s.
Well, it changes just about everything. You can imagine going from a tundra ecosystem to a shrub thicket is a really profound change. You've gone from essentially a two-dimensional landscape where the vegetation is flat on the ground or very low to the ground to a three-dimensional one where you sort of would have to push through the vegetation. So that'll affect how wildlife and people can travel across the land. It'll create habitat for species that weren't there before.
The enhanced vegetation also gives bears a better place to hide, raising anxiety among people who are traveling. And animal prints are becoming harder to track under more greenery. Over the years, the Torngat Mountain glaciers have begun to shrink, some of them disappearing. Glaciers rely on cold temperatures all year round, but the summers are getting warmer. All factors considered, the landscape is transforming right before people's eyes.
We have some major concerns as to what the outcome is and how long will we be able to hold on to this lifestyle that we're living,
Meg Roberts, CBC News.
The regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, which includes Fort McMurray, is still leading the province in terms of case spread per capita.
COVID-19 cases are surging in Fort McMurray.
After the break, we'll hear from a newspaper reporter on the ground covering the story.
Well, to a COVID-19 hotspot now that is a second home to many working people from this province, Fort McMurray. Alberta is seeing near record numbers, more than 1,800 new cases a day, and that's an infection surge that we haven't seen since last December. Vincent McDermott joins me now. He's the editor of Fort McMurray Today. So Vincent, what's the latest? What's the situation like where you are?
Well, the regional municipality of Wood Buffalo, which includes Fort McMurray, is still leading the province in terms of case spread per capita, and it also leads rural Alberta for the most active cases and outbreaks in workplaces and in schools. And most of these workplace outbreaks are at large oil sands facilities north of the city.
Now, as you know, Vincent, many workers from our province work in Alberta. I know lots of other Canadians work in Alberta as well. What's the situation in those camps? If it's that bad where you are, what about in those oil camps?
Well, so local case numbers in Fort McMurray and the municipality do not include the commuter workforce. So the number of people in the region that have COVID right now is actually much higher than what is on the province's website of COVID cases. In the camps, I know yesterday the province announced that oil sands facilities will start vaccinating their workforce. A lot of companies already have the logistics to vaccinate their workers against flu during flu season. That being said, there's been a minimum of at least 2,000 workers who have had COVID-19 in current outbreaks. And that doesn't include people who have been sick in past outbreaks or in cases that just did not count as outbreaks.
Well, I guess, and of those 2,000 workers, I guess it's difficult to say whether those are Albertans who are going to stay in Alberta or if those are rotational workers from Newfoundland and Labrador who might be coming home, right?
Right. The province counts it by residency. So, for instance, if you're a Calgary resident and you test positive at a site like Curl Lake, for instance, that's counted as a Calgary case, even though you tested positive at Curl. And of course, it's just the nature of the industry. Someone who is technically a Calgary resident may also be flying home back to a place like Newfoundland or other places of the country regularly.
Well, Vincent, for oil workers, be they Albertan or from here, what do you think is the most difficult thing for them in this third wave, which really shows no sign of abating?
Well, I mean, I've heard some workers complain that the workplaces aren't taking their safety seriously, considering the number of workplace outbreaks that have happened. Then there's also plenty of other complaints that existed even before COVID, which is things like isolation, being away from families. So there's definitely that mental health component, but certainly the fear of catching COVID while on the job just adds to that.
And a final question for you, Vincent. I noticed that variants of concern now make up more than 60% of the 21,000 cases in Alberta, in your province. Do any of the health experts in Alberta have a sense as to when this is going to simmer down a bit?
No, in fact, a lot of doctors have been calling on the province to actually increase restrictions, but so far there hasn't really been any sign that any province-wide restrictions are going to be coming anytime soon, although the Premier has said that additional restrictions in COVID hotspots are being considered.
All right, Vincent, well, listen, you stay safe, and I really appreciate getting the perspective and the point of view from there in Fort McMurray. It's so important to so many people from Newfoundland and Labrador. Thank you very much, and stay well.
All right, thanks, Anthony.
Now to Nova Scotia, where that province is reporting 70 new cases of COVID-19 today, mainly in the greater Halifax area. That's down from a daily high of 96 cases a couple of days ago. The province is on its second day of a 2-week lockdown.
We've gone from low COVID activity to widespread activity in Halifax, and it happened quickly. And it could just as quickly spread to other areas of the province. So far, that is thankfully not the case. We are at a turning point. What happens next is going to go one of two ways, and our collective actions will decide that path. Either we get things under control now, and we can loosen restrictions as we head into the summer, or we don't. and these restrictions have to last a lot longer than 2 weeks. So my message today is just because you can does not mean you should. We need to closely follow the restrictions that are in place. It's critical. Lives, jobs, businesses, and our healthcare system are all at stake.
The Premier in the province got a lot of good publicity this week by sending 9 healthcare workers to help with the COVID fight in Ontario. Does this change the channel? Our political panel will weigh in next. Welcome back to Here and Now. I'm Peter Cowan, and it's time for our political panel. There's been lots of positive press for this province from the rest of Canada after we sent 9 nurses and doctors to help with Ontario's COVID-19 situation. They arrived in Toronto in a military cargo plane. It was covered live on national media. There were plenty of journalists there to meet them. So what does all this coverage do for this province's profile and for the Premier, who was front and center in all of this? Former NDP leader Jerry Rogers, former Liberal MHA Colin Holloway, and former PC Cabinet Minister Sandy Collins are all here with their thoughts. First, though, I want to start with this clip from an interview with Jennifer Hinks. She's the nurse practitioner on the team, and she did this with Toronto's Breakfast Television.
You are incredible. Again, we thank you. We thank your team. Congratulations, by the way, and best of luck on your wedding in the fall. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Jennifer Hinks, thank you so much. Come on, it doesn't get any better than that.
We saw the plane coming in yesterday, and it made everyone feel so good, because I don't know if you know, Ontario hasn't had a lot of good news lately.
Yeah.
To see you guys come in was just fun. Forgive me, I didn't mean to hijack this interview, Mel. I'm sorry. I'm such a huge fan of Jen. Just on behalf of everyone here and in the province, please give our best to everyone on the team, and whatever you need, let us know.
So it doesn't get much more effusive than that. Jerry Rogers, we sent 9 people out of the 620 that Ontario says it actually needs. Do we deserve all this praise?
Well, I think the folks that stepped up, kudos to them, congratulations. You know, these are people who work in a healthcare system here in Newfoundland and Labrador where people are overworked, where they don't often have the support that they really need to do their work. And they've stepped up and said, I want to help, and they're doing that. And we are in a healthcare crisis right now in our province where tens of thousands of people do not have family doctors. So it is my hope, I have two hopes that for this. A, that the generous people who have stepped up, who are giving of themselves and their expertise. We haven't been in that kind of a crisis yet with COVID. Hopefully we won't be, but hopefully they will learn something that they can bring back to the province in terms of working in that very intense crisis there, working with different variants and people in intensive care. So hopefully we will gain something as well. And the other thing is that hopefully the government of Newfoundland and Labrador will respond as quickly and as generously to the healthcare crisis that we are facing here in our system in Newfoundland and Labrador, with the shortage of nurses, the shortage of doctors, and people really, really crying out for primary care.
I want to get to that issue in a second, but Colin, let me ask you about sort of the goodwill that this is creating with the rest of the country. Newfoundland and Labrador, it's no secret, is looking for federal help with things like Muskrat Falls rate mitigation. How much does some goodwill gesture like this help with that sort of negotiation, do you think?
Well, I think from that perspective, it's a smart move for Andrew Furey, you know, to be sending healthcare workers to Ontario. And I think either a day or so ago, the province also offered to do some additional testing for Nova Scotia. Of course, Nova Scotia is in a lockdown now. They're into a 2-week lockdown. So it does provide an opportunity for some really good social capital, I think, with respect to not only the federal government, but also the rest of Canada, because you would want support from all the provinces. If you're going to go back to Ottawa, and you know, this government has been to Ottawa in terms of asking, can we have a different formula? We have a significant financial debt here, but we also need a new formula for how we're going to address, you know, what's happening with Muskrat Falls and how that's impacting the long-term debt here.
Now, I want to ask about the Premier's profile, because he has been front and center. His wife, after all, Dr. Alison Furey, is one of the 9 who went to Ontario. So, Sandy, what do you think this does for his profile in the province after a couple of other issues that haven't been handled all that well by him in his office?
Yeah, well, I think it provides an opportunity for Premier Furey, and an opportunity he seems to have seized quite greatly over the last couple of days. You know, as a politician, and more particularly as a premier, he's going to wear a whole lot of negative things. Some things he deserves, some things he doesn't. It would be hard to fault him if he tried to attach himself to something that he's able to, particularly because of the family connection with Dr. Alison Furey, his wife. And it shows a human side of him and his family, one that we can all relate to. So, you know, I don't want to make too much of a big deal. I think it is good news. It's a feel-good story. And after the year and a half we've had, I think we could all use a little good news. I think if I can speak collectively for everyone, I think our main concern, of course, is that team of doctors and nurses return home safe and sound in Newfoundland and Labrador, and the help they provide, as Jerry had said, could potentially provide a greater assistance to us if in the future, if we need it, which is quite possible by the way things are looking. So.
When you talk about changing the channel, one of the issues that has come up again today is the renaming of Red Indian Lake. Last week, the Premier and the Minister for Indigenous Affairs and Reconciliation insisted it was a done deal. It was going to be renamed. Then there was a bunch of backlash. Now they're saying, hold on, we're going to do some consultations. Jerry, let's start with you. What do you make of the fact that they're now saying that they are going to consult?
Well, of course, you know, there needs to be more consultation. And when we look at poor Premier Andrew Furey, he just can't get a break. He has made so many decisions that he has had to flip-flop on, and it calls into question the depth of his understanding of governing. And what does that mean? Because when we look at how he said that he had done the probabilistic data before calling the election, that he consulted, he claims to have done consultations in a number of ways, and yet either the consultation doesn't appear to actually have happened, or he has decided to not take the consultation seriously. So this is just another one of his missteps, and I'm hoping that he's learning from it.
Colin, do you think that does he sort of win points for actually listening to people and hearing their concerns and changing tack, or does he come across as looking weaker here because he's having to reverse his position that he was pretty solid on just a week ago, that this was going ahead, it was a done deal?
I suppose you can't fault any leader who says, you know, with new information, I can change my mind. But I agree with Jerry, like he's making some decisions, standing hard on it, and then he's having to step back from it. So, you know, that's not always a good place to put yourself. The All-Party Committee on Election Reform, remember a week or so ago, that wasn't going to happen. It was going to be, you know, in the House, and, you know, the government was going to push forward. And then we heard, no, there's an all-party committee. Now, we talked about it here on this panel. So maybe some people are listening.
I'm glad he wanted to hit the pause button and reevaluate where they are with this. This is not, you know, I'd like to attribute this to a rookie mistake, but he's no longer a rookie, I don't think. But, you know, this is not something new to this government. When governments make knee-jerk decisions, they try to appease a small group of people and end up upsetting a whole group of others. As Colin said, you know, go out with proper consultations, and that would include obviously Indigenous groups. It would obviously include locals, historians. Do that homework before coming out and giving the public, you know, the direction where we're going. And it would avoid a whole lot of these missteps and probably having to go back on things, on mistakes that they made. So anyway, it's good on them for, you know, hitting the pause button and reevaluating, but it's unfortunate that we tend to see these things happen over and over again.
Well, thank you very much, all three of you, for joining me and sharing your insights.
Thank you, Peter.
Thanks, Peter.
Welcome back. Well, a nice tip of the hat to tell you about tonight for one local band.
Yeah, the East Coast Music Awards honored the famous trio, Buddy, what's his name, and the other fellers.
Just to wake up in the morning to the quiet of the cove and hear Aunt Bessie talking to herself.
What a song. They can bring a tear to your eye or make you keel over laughing. The legendary musical comedy group won the Stompin' Tom Connors Award, which recognizes their long and successful career.
Now, unfortunately, they won't be able to take part or do push-ups at the awards in person next week, and that's because of COVID-19 outbreak in Nova Scotia we told you so much about. That has forced the ECMAs to be virtual once again for the second straight year.
But congratulations. So funny. This is a lovely honor for that group.
Definitely.
So a look at the long-range forecast, looking ahead to the weekend.
Finally the weekend.
How's the weather looking?
Well, it's going to be a little bit unsettled to start, and that's because we've got that area of low pressure that's going to move and bring that rain Friday night into the first half of Saturday. Let's take a look at the future tracker. You can see that snow potential for the northern peninsula as well as southeastern Labrador. Now, around this time of year, I'm thinking this will be a really wet snow if it does accumulate, more than likely just on grassy surfaces, but we could see 5+ centimeters of snow with this one overnight, like I said, into the first half of Saturday morning. Some more showers. The rain will taper to showers through the day, and then some clearing skies into the afternoon for eastern areas of the island. So it should be a pretty beautiful Saturday with temperatures climbing as well. And then that snow potential will continue for Labrador along the coast. You'll likely mix with some rain through the day on Saturday. Same thing pretty much continues as Sunday, as that area of low pressure takes the same track the last one did and sticks around through the weekend. But Sunday looking a little bit nicer. We'll probably see some more peaks of sun in the mix across the island. However, staying unsettled across most of Labrador as we get into late day on Sunday. By the time we get into Monday, or at least Sunday night into Monday, the next system will roll in and we'll see that risk of some showers and or flurries again, mainly through central. Taking a look at the temperatures on Saturday, there's the temperature I'm thinking for St. John's. 14 degrees it looks like right now. As you head towards central, likely staying more gray, as well as that chance of showers will continue through the afternoon. Between 8 to 10 degrees, a little cooler for coastal area or west coast, as we see that onshore flow. And again, those higher elevations more than likely mixing with some flurries through the day on Saturday. Staying into the single digits across Labrador as well. Most of you are going to be on the cold side of that, or at least into the flurries, and then mixing with rain for the southeast. We're going to see a similar forecast for Sunday as far as temperatures go. For Labrador, maybe a degree or two warmer, some more sunshine in play as well. And you can see more of that sunshine for the end of the weekend for Central. So definitely the best day of the weekend for sure. Temperatures will be sitting in the double digits for most of us, between 8 to 9 degrees for the rest of the island. Taking a look at St. John's, Eastern Newfoundland over the next 5 days, double digits in the forecast. Monday looks a little cooler at 7, but also that potential for a few showers. Tuesday looks to clear out and back into those double digits. For Central Newfoundland, same drop in temperatures, a little bit more cloud cover on Monday. By Tuesday, that'll clear out. Same thing for Western Newfoundland with temperatures a little bit warmer, about 6 to 9 degrees through the weekend. But again, in those higher elevations with those cooler temperatures, still looking at the potential for some flurries. And then to start the week next week for Eastern Labrador, you're looking at some sunshine as well as a few showers on Tuesday, 7 to 9 degrees. And then for Western Labrador, unfortunately, the flurries are going to stick around for you. Wanted to share this photo. It's been overcast for lots of us. This was in Admiral's Beach. Thank you to Michael for sharing that. And if you have any weather photos, send them to nlphotos@cbc.ca.
Gorgeous.
Yeah, a little less gray outside where we are right now, looking at Terry Roberts and Mark Quinn. Going to get out there and enjoy a bit of sun before the sun comes down.
Yeah, for sure. Well, thanks so much, everyone, for joining us tonight.
See you tomorrow.
Good night.